everyone, and welcome to another episode of Keys to Success for Music Majors. I'm Charley Roush, and I'm a librarian at UTRGV. I specialize in music research.
And I'm Katrina Roush. I'm a professor of music theory at UTRGV. We have a special guest with us today. This is Dr. Rebecca Coberly. She's going to talk to us a little bit about juries. So we're going to get to know her a little bit, and then she's going to help explain kind of the process of juries and what they're for and how you can think about preparing for them. Welcome, Dr. Coberly. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much for asking me. It's a treat.
So you're a professor of voice, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us, just to start off, a little bit about yourself, how long you've been at UTRGV, and what kinds of things do you teach other than voice lessons?
Okay. Yeah, I'll start kind of with the end of that. I started at UTRGV when it was actually still UTPA in 2009, and it was actually my first university position after I got my doctorate. So it was a great place to start, and it's been a great place to be, and I've loved seeing how it's grown and changed and developed over the last over 10 years at this point. Before that, I was born in Texas, actually, grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and had music as part of my life. I came from a very musical family. I sang in a really great church choir, children's choir, so I'm a huge fan of those kinds of activities because I think that's probably where I got some of my best professional experience as a young singer. Just, you know, all good professional behavior and really good musical musical instruction. I will keep this relatively short. I did my undergraduate at Northwestern. I started actually as an English major and then switched to music in my junior year, and so I actually came to it a little bit later than some of you all obviously did. Went on to do my master's degree in performance at Rice and was in Houston for a good 13 years doing that, and then also teaching. I taught a lot of high school students. I taught in a lot of high school systems and singing. And one of the most fun things I did there was I was a member of the Houston Grand Opera Chorus for 6 years, which was an extremely eye-opening and wonderful experience. And then I went back to school to get my doctorate at Texas Tech after that. So that's the short history of how I got here.
Sure. All right.
That's really cool.
And so today we're talking about juries. And just was curious, from a professor's perspective, what would you say is the main point or goal of a jury? And how can this be different from maybe a more typical performance like a lesson or a studio class or even a recital? How would a jury be different?
I think that's a really great question because I think we very often have no idea as students why we're doing this other than we need a grade. So I'm so glad that you're asking that. I think, yeah, for me as an applied professor, if I'm working with a student in a lesson or in a studio class, my goals are very formative. So in other words, I'm very focused in that moment on what can we do to make this better? How can I help you? And of course, I'm always thinking that way as a teacher, you know, through any exercise, but that's really the focus in those moments. And so of course you want to come in as a student as well prepared as possible, but it's very much a building process. Any singing that you do in those contexts, I'm sitting there writing down and thinking, okay, what can I tell you to help you get to the next level? And so it's very much a teaching exercise. For recitals and performances like that, those are very formal, very, capstone oriented moments. And they're also very audience oriented moments. So the focus of those is, this is the culmination of several years worth of work, generally in terms of building your technique, building your repertoire, building your performance abilities. And here we are, and we're going to show the world what you've done.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So those are kind of the two ends of the experience. A jury, for me, as an applied professor, is a really great opportunity for me to get a snapshot of where a student is in their performance abilities. Right. So you've learned all your music, we're not going to go back and or at least in the juries I've been a part of, you're not going to go back and say, okay, let's fix that note here. Let's fix this moment here. Oh, you had a little slip there. Let's go back and do that. It's, about presenting what you've done in its entirety, getting feedback on that. And then for me as an applied teacher, I'll say one more thing about that too. It's a chance for me to see you in performance and really get a sense of what you're doing, and also see you performing in front of people you don't always perform in front of.
Okay.
So the
Yeah.
other applied faculty. So you're getting feedback from there too. Um, the thing I was going to say earlier is that as a teacher, also, I bring a lot of context into a lesson or into a studio class. I'm thinking, okay, what did this singer sound like last week?
Hmm.
What is the singer working on right now? Okay, great. That vowel was almost there. Let's work on it a little further. So a lot of times I'm kind of focusing on where you are in the trajectory. The jury is a really great chance for me to get a look at, okay, this person as a singer right now, what are they doing?
Okay. Yeah.
I'm always bringing the context into it, but it allows me to kind of isolate that for a moment. And it
Sure.
can be very helpful to, I think to all of us to kind of see exactly where people are.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. That's really helpful. So kind of, you mentioned this a little bit, but when your students are in their jury, you obviously are in there, but there are other professors as well in there to see them and to grade them, correct?
Oh, absolutely. And this is going to vary a little bit by area. But I know for the voice area, it's typically, at the very least, the voice faculty that work with the students regularly on their particular campus.
Okay.
So it's usually between, three or maybe even, five or six faculty all scribbling away as we watch you sing.
That's a really great opportunity for a student to get comments and ideas from people they don't normally work with. And also, because you're so close to your individual students, you're going to have a different perspective than somebody who only sees them once a semester, really. So,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
And as performers, their task is to be communicating or connecting to different audiences throughout their life. So that's a really neat opportunity.
Yeah. So other than like who they're performing for, in general, what can students expect in a typical jury? Like, what does it look like for someone who's maybe never done one before? Like, what can they kind of expect going in? Because I know every new thing we do as students is kind of scary because we just don't know kind of what to expect. I know that this is going to, again, differ by area, and we should always emphasize that students should talk to their specific applied professor to talk about the specifics of each individual instrument or voice jury. So, but just in general, what are the kinds of things that a student can expect?
Yeah, and so in a normal year, I think we can all agree that this is not a normal year. But in a normal year, yeah, and I'll speak to the voice juries, but I think this is pretty common. Usually, it starts by we'll set a date for the juries. You need to make sure that you're available for that date. The what we'll usually do is we'll post a schedule. We'll get feedback from various pianists and students also on any scheduling issues. We'll post a schedule. Each student gets usually about 8 minutes in their slot to perform. And so that's the first thing is you just want to know when you're supposed to perform, what date you're performing on, get all those logistical details sorted out. At the actual jury, generally what we ask is students bring usually one or two pieces of paper. They'll bring a repertoire form that they need to have filled out. And often they'll also bring an evaluation form. Sometimes we have those ourselves. Sometimes we ask the students to bring them. So again, that's just something to check on. But we'll have an evaluation form for them. Generally what will happen is you'll come in and we'll say hi to you, and often we're continuing to scribble as we're doing that. So be patient with us and wait, because we're trying to finish the sentence and remember how to spell things. And then we'll ask you to stand in front of the piano, and we'll ask you what you want to sing for your first selection. Typically in a voice jury, we'll ask people to have learned between 4 and 6 songs per semester. Usually it's 4 for freshmen, 6 for almost everybody else. For graduate students, it's a little higher than that. So we'll ask for your first selection. You sing us the thing that you're going to present it's going to present you with the best possible way. And then we will look at your repertoire list and we'll start asking for other songs.
Okay, so the students get to typically select one that they know they're the strongest at, and then the panel of faculty will ask for others. So you have to make sure everyone is well prepared because you don't know which one you might be asked.
Yes, and I'll throw something else in here too. I did this as a student too. I'll admit to it. It's very tempting to try to overthink your first selection
Yeah.
in terms of what you think we'll ask for.
Right.
And in various years, I hear students say, oh, well, they won't ask for the English song. Or, oh, if I pick this French song, they won't ask for that French song. And sometimes you're right. Very often you're not.
Right.
And so, yeah, going back to what you just said, the easiest way to make sure that you are going to sing a good jury is to make sure you're well prepared on everything, because we could ask for any of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. And sort of springing off from that, obviously practicing is just the key cornerstone to preparing for juries or any performance, really. But do you have any other specific suggestions or tactics or even advice for how students can prepare for juries?
Yeah, I think, yeah, obviously practicing, yes, absolutely. Yeah, there are two areas where I see students just run into some challenges. One is one of the things you can do to help yourself out is just check the logistics of what you're doing. Some of the things that make people very nervous is just not knowing what they're doing next. You got to remember that you're probably preparing for other finals. There are lots of end of the semester issues to deal with, and so you know, so make sure you've got your jury forms. Make sure you know when you're supposed to perform. Make sure you're in a position to get there early, because sometimes we run early and we'll ask people to come in early. And so you want to be there at least 15 minutes ahead. Sometimes people recommend more. Make sure you've got your music in order. Make sure, you know, juries are usually a little bit more formal. Make sure you figured out what you're wearing. You know, that moment where you find out that you know, the heel on that shoe is broken that you were planning on wearing, that can be a stressful moment.
Yeah.
And so just make sure you've got, you know, all that figured out. Figure out the easy stuff ahead of time, so you're not scrambling when you walk in the door. It's very easy to forget your own name, much less the lyrics of a Schubert song, you know, if you're frazzled. The other thing I'd say is just it's mental preparation. It's very, as I said, we tend to drive ourselves a little bit crazy. We start overthinking and we start kind of, you know, trying to figure out how to game it, for lack of a better phrase. And we also are very susceptible to negative self-talk.
Oh yeah.
Right. I think any of us as performers have experienced that. And so you start thinking about everything that could go wrong. You start thinking about all of the things that, you know, you're not as good at yet as you wish you were. And we all have those too at every single level. And you start, and it's very easy to talk yourself into a position where you're just sure this isn't going to go well. And you have to remember that you're the only one who controls that. It's your brain. So part of our job as performers is learning to notice that and cut it off. And then you can also, some tricks you can do is, you know, if you start worrying about everything that can go wrong, start thinking about, you know, the positive things that you can do if that happens. Right? If you forget a word, that happens to everybody. How are you going to handle it? So you start thinking more proactively about what you're going to do. I think the other thing I see people get very tangled up in is thinking about what we're going to be thinking.
Yeah.
And I know what some of the best audition advice I ever got was, don't try to figure out what the audition panel is thinking, because you can't possibly know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and I think students sometimes forget, you know, it's a very long day for professors, or a long couple of days. You don't know if someone just hasn't had a chance to eat breakfast and lunch. And that has nothing to do with someone's performance, but you may be interpreting it one way or another. Everybody is under strain these days too. So
yeah, actually, going along with that a little bit, I think about you know, some of the professors I've had in the past, just their resting face made me think they were disapproving with me. Like, I had a professor that it always looked like she was frowning, but she wasn't. That's just like how her eyebrows were shaped. And so it was a good reminder to, you know, like you said, not overthink that. Don't say, oh, I'm in the middle of singing this song and now I'm thinking about how Dr. Coberly looks like she's unhappy. I must have done something wrong. That's not necessarily true at all. And it's good to just keep that focus on how you're performing in the moment.
And, you know, I sat in on a few juries when I was in grad school. I helped evaluate a few. And so I'm a clarinet performer. And okay, Brahms, right? Brahms is just gorgeous. It's amazing chamber music. But there's something psychological that happens when you've heard the first movement of Brahms' Second Sonata 30 times in 3 days. It's just, I love this music, but what is happening right now? And that has nothing to do with the student that's performing. It's just a weird situation.
Oh, absolutely. And it kind of goes back too to the worry about, maybe what you don't feel like you're as good at yet. Yeah, and that kind of goes back to it too. Yeah, focus on your performance, focus on what you need to do next to do it well. We tend to live in the past a lot sometimes in performances, and it's always about the next thing. And focus on the stuff you do well. God, don't sacrifice the stuff that's working for the stuff that's not quite there yet.
Yep.
Right.
And I think too, going back to what you were saying about jury panels too, it's not unusual to sing an entire voice jury without anybody looking at you more than twice. Or even once, right? We're doing this.
Right, you're writing. And also when you start to write something, that doesn't mean you have a bad comment about something that just happened. You might even have a positive comment about something. So again, like not trying to, psych yourself out, but just kind of, I mean, would you say that it's okay for a performer to not look at you also? I mean, I know they're going to be facing in your direction, but if they find, a spot on the wall to kind of block that noise out, would that be something you would recommend or?
Yeah, it depends on the student. I mean, sometimes when we get, this is a vocal technique thing, but sometimes if we get too focused on, looking above their heads, we start tilting this way, which actually throws the alignment off. But actually I think, that's another thing you can actually practice is, how are you going to focus and where are you going to focus? Because very often you don't look at the panel. I actually like it when students look at me. Some people don't.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it kind of varies by performer. And I'm assuming this goes for other instruments as well. I know for singers in particular, where to look is an issue because you're not holding an instrument.
Right.
And so
like, what do you do with yourself?
You have to, I can't focus on that. I have to focus on that. And so, figuring out where you're going to focus and also, as you were saying, you don't have to make eye contact, and it may well be that nobody makes eye contact with you. So you have to create that world that you're seeing in that sense of focus. That makes a big difference actually in performances. When performers come in, and I'll say that instead of students, performers come in with that real sense of where they're going to look and what they're going to do.
Yeah, I was just thinking it's very similar to, what you think about giving a recital, like you're on the stage, like it's your performance and you kind of get to be in charge of creating that for your audience. It's not that different in a jury.
No, it's really not. And we treat it so differently sometimes. So I'm really glad you said that. Because we want to see a performance.
Sure.
We want to see we want to see you take over the room. And that's your time. That's your 8 minutes to show us, who you are and what you can do. And so, don't spend any of it worrying about us.
Yeah.
That's great advice. Okay, well, we have one last question for you that has nothing to do with what we've been talking about. Do you have a hobby that you'd like to tell us about? Maybe something that has nothing to do with your job, but just something you enjoy doing if you ever get free time.
I don't have one big hobby. I have several little amusements that I enjoy. I've especially during this pandemic, I've enjoyed exploring, just rudimentary baking. I'm always a big fan of reading, especially when I get to read. I love reading things about music. I also love reading things about music. And I've been kind of taking a dive into, books about World War II lately. May have to do with the current pandemic, I'm not sure. Things like that. I try to get out and get some walking done. But a lot of my own amusements tend to be along the lines of, remembering to cook good and yummy food as opposed to ordering from Grubhub when I have time.
So bad.
Enjoying, reading and learning about things that are outside of my sphere.
Yeah, that's excellent. Well, thank you so much for being with us. This is really fun, and I think you have a lot of really great advice for how students can think, even students who have done juries before. I think you've given us a lot to think about, so thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
I hope so, and good luck to everybody.
All right, I think we'll just put our contact information up on the screen just in case you would like to contact us. As always, feel free to do so. But any questions that you have or any suggestions for future podcasts, I think that's it, all that we have for you for today. So thank you again, Dr. Coberly, for being with us, and to all of our viewers, thanks for being with us as well. And good luck preparing for your juries, and we'll see you next week.
Alrighty, talk to everyone later.
Bye.